Hey, on Cloudy with a Chance of Learning. I'm Bill Taylor in the Ken's 5 Digital Center. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday, April 6th, 2020. Certainly going down in history as the most unusual days of our lives. Am I right? There's a new soap opera we can start. The Most Unusual Days of Our Lives, starring everybody. And starring my co-host, meteorologist Meagan Massey from the Massey compound. How are you?
Hey, Bill, I'm great. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. How's Ollie doing in this quarantine? You've got the most beautiful dog. What breed is Ollie?
Oh, thank you. He's an Aussie Collie mix, and he just barked at the mailman outside of our window right before we started. So I'm glad that he's moved and Ollie is quiet now, but that's an everyday thing.
And that it is. It's a dog's DNA, isn't it? I mean, it's like
It
programmed. They
is.
have to bark at every delivery. But I love it. That's what, of course, alerts us. Cats are
Hmm.
like, yeah, whatever. Okay, somebody else is here.
Whatever. Yeah.
So let's talk a little weather. We had a split over the weekend. Saturday, I
Yeah.
mean, cool and rainy, and then Sunday, we didn't see as much rain as we had kind of anticipated last week, thankfully.
Right. So rain chances really dropped off on Sunday. We only hit 58 degrees on Saturday, and on Sunday we hit 70. So kind of a 12-degree difference there over the weekend. It felt nice yesterday. It was overcast, but at least we hit the 70s, right?
Right? Nice rebound. And
Hmm.
I know we're still locked in this damp pattern. I mean, even though we're not getting rain as we speak, hill country
Yeah.
is, and there's more rain in this forecast.
So we'll be watching that atmospheric cinnamon roll, as we like to call it, over California right now. That's going to be our next rainmaker that's supposed to produce numerous showers and storms late week, like Friday and Saturday.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that we're getting a good spread on time between these bands of rain because Saturday was pretty good. I mean, you talk about a deposit.
Right.
We had 2, 3, up to 4 inches of rain, even Friday for some spots. So heading into Saturday, I was getting a little concerned that if we don't get the break, we're going to start seeing some flooding occur.
Yeah, definitely. And we got pictures from viewers on Facebook saying they received over 7 inches of rainfall in like 48 hours, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. And then on Friday,
Hmm.
Andrew and I were tracking that supercell in McMullen County. Tilden had grapefruit-sized hail. And we had this
Hmm.
one viewer send in a picture and the video that proved it. I mean, unfortunately, we didn't see a hailstone, but his
Yeah.
windshield was all shattered. He had the rain falling. I mean, you could not see the nose at the end of your face. I mean, it was just a whiteout of hail and heavy rain. It was incredible. And then you saw the accumulation of the hail. It looked like it snowed in Tilden.
Jeez.
Crazy. Well, I'm excited
Yeah,
about
that is
Moon
crazy.
Monday, Megan Massey. A
Me
lot of
too.
alliteration going on there. Where does your fascination start with our natural satellite, the moon?
Oh goodness. I would say I've always loved astronomy and weather. As a kid, I was in Girl Scouts for like 13 years, right? So we always talked about space. And I remember going to planetariums a lot as a kid, which I personally loved. And just going to the what is it, Johnson Space Center in Houston. That's
Oh
pretty
yeah.
cool. So once all this mess is over with, hopefully our families can go travel up to Houston and check that Space Center out.
There might even be some of the virtual tours available at Johnson, like there are so many museums going right now, and that's a really neat
Good
way to see
point.
it.
Yeah.
There is nothing like seeing it in person. I remember walking along that rocket from the old Apollo missions,
Mhm.
where you just had that small little, capsule at the top that was no bigger than
Hmm.
the room I'm in right now. I mean, it was probably smaller than the digital center for sure, and you had 3 astronauts in there and then all of that power behind them to get them off of our planet. I mean, that is just impressive. And it takes you several minutes to walk along this thing.
Yeah, I believe it.
All right, I want to show you when my fascination started because it was literally 50 years ago. I want to
Okay.
show you my debut in media. I made top fold, I made lead story, top story in the local paper in New Jersey. So I'm 2 years old, and we're going to take this full, and I'm going to show you right here. All right, hold on. Let me go here. There it is. That's me. So this is the morning news in Paterson, New Jersey. This is a big paper, and I mean, papers have changed a lot, but I have several copies of this, of course, because that's me right there. Where? Sorry, wrong side. This side. That's me. So I was at my house, right, and I'm sitting on the, look at the old console TV right there, okay, on the floor, my little white boots right there, right, and I'm trying to call the astronauts. And my Uncle Guido, yeah, I had an Uncle Guido, the Rocco family up in New Jersey. My Uncle Guido said, "This is so adorable. Look at my nephew, Billy." So he calls the paper. He says, "You got to come over here. Bring your cameras. My kid nephew over here is so cute. He's 2 years old. He's trying to call the astronauts." And when Uncle Guido wanted something, Uncle Guido got it. So sure enough, not only did they get there and get a photo, but I'm on the front page the next day trying to call the astronauts. And it says, you know, little Billy Taylor, that's what it says on the cut line, trying to call the astronauts from his Crosby Avenue home in Paterson, New Jersey. And it says, "Not this trip, Billy." So I've always thought that's what I'm going to title my autobiography. "Not this trip, Billy." But there I am trying to call the astronauts, July 20th, 1969. Pretty cool. I guess that's how I got started in media.
Yeah. 1969, that's a big year, too. We're going to talk about that today, too.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, very cool. All right, so let's get into kind of the dynamics. You, of course, another home run with how you put this all together for us, Megan. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
You know,
I would bow, but you know, it's hard.
2,200 satellites that are man-made, and the moon is our one natural satellite. It's about a quarter of the size of our planet Earth. And it's roughly 238,855 miles away from the Earth. So one thing that's cool is that it's orbiting at a speed of about 2,200 miles per hour. And similar to the Earth, it does have an axis on which it rotates at a very, very slow pace. In fact, it takes about 27 days, the same that it takes to orbit the Earth, for the moon to make one spin on its axis. It's almost the same, and that's why it never appears to be moving at all, because that rotation on its axis is awfully slow.
And Bill, I do want to add, NASA had a cool representation. They talked about this. If you want to get the idea or an idea of the size of Earth and the moon together, just get a little US nickel and one little green pea, put it right next to one another, and that's kind of the representation of size, you know, the comparison of moon and the Earth.
That's awesome. Are you hearing that, students? I want you guys to give that a shot. Take a nickel and then a pea, and then you can see the relationship in size, Earth, moon, nickel, pea. I love that.
There
Take
you
a
go.
picture. Take a picture with that, kids, and send that to us for Fun Time Friday. Remember, we're celebrating your pictures and your drawings, which, like I said, I'd love to. Oh, thanks, Carmen. Thanks, Angela. Oh, Harmony always forgets. That's right. How you doing? What's going on over there? That I'm from New Jersey.
You have to do the shoulders, right?
I'm thinking one day it would be fun to do like an entire weathercast in my Jersey accent. We got this area of low pressure, right? Probably going to provide a little bit of lift.
Yeah.
No, we've got plenty of great folks in today, so thank y'all so much for watching. Remember, we're going to definitely be answering some questions as we move along. And speaking of moving along, the moon, you can see it sometimes during the day, Megan, Massey, and that's pretty cool because, of course, we see it at night, and it's in different directions almost every night. But it's also sometimes visible during the day. Why is that?
Well, this could be on the quiz.
That's right.
It's the sun.
The sun makes that moon glow. If it wasn't for the sun, and remember just how far away that is compared to our moon, right? But then also, you want to talk about size. The size difference is phenomenal. It's said that you can fit 1 million Earths inside the sun. So just imagine how big, right? And it's a star that's close enough to us that it can illuminate the moon day and night, just depending on where that moon is in relationship to those sun rays.
So the sun in our solar system, it's kind of the center of everything. The direct sun rays, the light will just reflect onto the moon. That's kind of how that works there. That's what makes the moon glow.
We talk about relationship, and I love the nickel to pea analogy for Earth to moon. I talked about it last week, where you want to get an idea of how large the Milky Way galaxy is. If you could take our entire solar system, if that was the size of a quarter, the Milky Way galaxy would be a football field. So just imagine dropping a quarter on the 35-yard line of a football field, and that would be the Milky Way in our universe. Whoa.
That's
all
a
right,
good one,
some more
too.
moon facts. We always see the same side of the moon. That was interesting to me, Megan. You'd think about it, again, rotating on its axis, but we always see that same side of the moon rotating on its axis at about it takes about a month for it to not only get around the Earth, but also for it to make a complete turn on its axis. Unlike us, we're moving on our axis at about 1,000 miles per hour, while we're being hurled around the sun at 60,000 miles an hour. So the moon's moving much slower in both cases.
And so, the moon will rotate on its axis at the same time it orbits around our Earth. So, like you said, we're just constantly seeing the same face of the moon as it orbits around Earth. And like you said, it's our natural satellite.
What's really cool is that there's something called libration to the moon. A lot of research that I'll tell you about in a second, because I saw one of the slides will explain this and have a wonderful segue in. But what we know about the moon is that there's a very slight libration going on. Libration, not libation. Big difference in those words. You add the R. Libration means it's a small, vibration of the moon. The moon is not just sitting still. It's actually kind of pushing back. Like each side kind of moves just a very little bit. Okay? It's really cool. The moon has many phases. This is what we watch every month. As we mentioned, it takes that 1 month to make a complete rotation. So that means we have a full moon once a month usually, right, Megan?
Exactly. So you can see the phases there when you can't see the moon really at all in the night sky. That's when we talk about the new moon.
And I know a lot of you in science class have studied this part of astronomy, where you have the first quarter, the waxing crescent, and you can have a calendar. A lot of you have your iPhones or mom and dad's iPhone, and you can have the calendar ready and look every day as to what moon phase we are in for that evening. And this has a lot to do with watching comets or watching meteorites and meteor showers. If we're in a full moon phase, that can really wash out a lot of our star viewing, because that brightness to the moon, you've been out in the country on a full moon night, it illuminates the ground. It's almost as though it's a spotlight, and you can see, once your eyes adjust to that area around you, you can see so much, and it's a moonlit land, not just sky.
That's a really good point.
We had, I forget which meteor shower it was. If it was Leonid, I don't think it was Leonid. It was one of the smaller ones. Leonid's one of our best ones every year. And there was one just recently, I want to say about 3-4 months ago, that was the perfect setup. We were like in new moon or, waxing crescent or waning crescent, like in that area where the moon is darkest in the sky at the same night of the peak of the meteor shower. And that is just perfect, for good viewing. And it was a great night of a meteor shower. Now, what and when was the first manned mission to land on the moon? There was a race. Every country wanted to get there first, and who did it? The US of A. And we did it on the Apollo 11 mission, July 20th, 1969. I showed you that newspaper. That was what we call Moon Day.
Goes back to your newspaper, Bill, of 1969, right?
Right. And what's cool about is looking at the ads in the paper, reading some of the, like the sports section, and then the size of the newspaper. I mean, it's like so much wider than the newspapers today.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look how wide it is. I mean, we're almost half this size. And this was, and it even says across the Morning News, New Jersey's only all-day newspaper. 40 pages, and the price of this was 5 cents, a nickel for this entire paper, where now, you know, we pay $5 for a Sunday paper.
That's a big increase, yeah.
Right? So what's cool is that on the Apollo mission, there were successive missions. There was other Apollo missions. In fact, the great movie Apollo 13, right, with Kevin Bacon. But what astronauts did on the Apollo 11 mission and ensuing missions, they put reflectors on the moon, just like a reflector you have on your bicycle. If you look really closely, and I want you to do this, look at one of those reflectors and look at the shape of the small pieces of glass and plastic that are inside there. They're little triangles, right? So that when a light hits it, it reflects right back to the source. So wherever that light's coming from, there'll be an equal amount of light returning. And that's a reflection, right? So it's a mirror almost, but a small little triangular piece of plastic, and that's how those reflectors are made up of several of those. And it could be that size right there on the back of your bike or on the front of your bike, on your spokes of your wheels, to make sure you're visible to lights. And they put a box probably about, it's not very large, almost about the size of this 52-inch or so, 57-inch monitor behind me. They put them on the moon in different spots. They're up there right now, and they put those back at 1969 and then ensuing Apollo missions. I think the total now is 3 of them, so that they could shoot a laser at those reflectors, and that laser shot would come back for different measurements about the libration, different measurements about where the moon is in its orbit, in its distance. When we talk about the hundreds of thousands of miles it is, I mean, to have that down to the exact mile, and the changes that occur with the moon, because it's believed that that libration was caused by a space rock, a meteor, hitting the moon at some point and kind of sending it into this little, you know, libration motion sometimes. So it's really cool. Those reflectors are awesome.
Amazing. Yeah.
And so you guys, didn't you guys travel, I know, recently out near Fort Davis?
I don't remember. Was it on the hill country?
So, you know, like far west, like Alpine. Have you ever been out there?
Oh, like Colorado, New Mexico area?
On that way, right. Like Big Bend,
Yeah.
north of Big Bend in Alpine, Texas, is the observatory.
Yeah.
The McDonald Observatory is where they shoot that laser from. And so Mike Humphreys, and you know Mike Humphreys, our chief photographer, and I went out there in July for Moon Day, and it was going to be a full moon. I mean, we were going to do a great story about that reflection and how it's a UT, University of Texas program that does all that research, that runs that laser beam and does the entire thing out there from McDonald. And we had 2 days in a row of bad weather. And if it's overcast, they don't even open the observatory. You know, they can't risk getting humidity on that lens or anything like that, so they don't even open it. Like, we toured it, we said, all right, we'll wait another day and see how what we got hailstorms the next day. I mean, we were just we were filled with bad luck on that trip. So we turned around and came back without a story. It was bad. But
Oh, wow.
if you ever get a chance, anybody out there, to head out to the McDonald Observatory, one of the coolest missions and projects that we've ever done. All right, great trivia question that could be on our final exam, Megan. First astronauts to ever set foot on the moon.
Ooh, good question.
Right? First?
I wonder if anyone's commenting. Not yet.
Let's see. Miss my Spurs, miss my Fiesta. Can November get here any quicker? Right, Stephen? I'm with you, man. I want normalcy back bad. I believe there's a pink moon right around now. Oh, that's interesting, Vera. The sugar moon. Not sure. Are we supposed to have a sugar moon? We are going to have a super moon tomorrow night. That's that pink moon you're talking about. So there's 2 times of year where the moon is closest to us in orbit and it matches with a full moon. So that's why we call it a supermoon, that you just get those two to coincide, where you have the moon at its closest in its orbit and a full moon on the same night. So it's going to appear usually like 10 to 15% larger in the sky. And sometimes it can be so beautiful. So the answer, anybody? Neil Armstrong.
We have Andy saying Neil Armstrong and Stacy.
That's exactly right. One small step for man,
Yep.
one giant leap for mankind. Great quote. And I wonder, you think about that moment. I mean, to be in the mindset of Neil Armstrong, to be the first man to put that foot down, right? And then knowing that whatever you say would live in infamy, would be such a moment. I mean, could you imagine the pressure?
Man. And he left a United States flag on the moon.
Exactly. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin. All right, now here's what's cool. How do we study the moon? Now, this is what I was talking about with that. I was a little ahead of the game here, but telescopes and spacecraft, that reflective project I talked to you about from the McDonald Observatory. We know the moon is covered by craters, along with dust, debris, comets, asteroids, meteoroids, everything that you can see. That's such a great image of the moon. It's rotating, and you can see the differences and what happens because of those craters, and how how the light reflects off of them too, right?
Right, exactly. So, what causes the moon to glow? It's the sun. So you could really see just the detail. Of course, we see the same face of the moon. So oftentimes you can see how it's covered by craters, especially if you have a telescope at home.
Absolutely, yeah. And I always want to plug my good friend Brian and his group, Salsa. Brian Tobias is with the San Antonio League of Sidewalk Astronomers, SALSA, best acronym ever. And they have a tremendous group of experts on telescopes that you can bring yours out to them. They can show you how to use it best, how to get the most out of it. If you're also interested in what kind of telescope I should buy, like I'm a real amateur and I'm just interested, because telescopes, like a lot of things, you can get in at the ground level, or you could go real high dollar, and if you want to go high dollar and get a very good one, you really want to consult with one of these experts before you write that check or pay for it, for sure. And just look up Salsa on the internet and you'll get plugged into Brian Tobias. I know everything, of course, suspended for a time being, but they do some great watch parties. They usually go out to the Harburger Park, the Harburger Dog Park, and it's just a big open field, and they set up all their telescopes, and it's the coolest thing ever, because one of the nights I was in there, and I'm looking at the moons of Jupiter, and it's just surreal when you can see not only Jupiter and the big red storm on it, so detailed, and you're looking at it live. I mean, we've seen pictures and video, but when you're looking through a telescope and you realize you're looking at it right now, and then you're looking at the moons, it's fascinating. I love it.
It really is. Yeah.
Michael Collins, absolutely, Brandy. Thank you. Perfect. Buzzed around the moon in '69. Great way to put it, Nando. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so apparently Collins was still on the spacecraft, but he was going around the moon taking pictures and doing experiments. So it was really Buzz and Neil Armstrong while they were on the moon, and I guess they took over an hour. I think it was an hour and a half up to 2 hours around the moon, just kind of looking at everything, also collecting space rocks. Collins was going around the moon doing experiments and taking pictures of the moon.
So one of the things that's cool too is there was an astronaut, I don't believe it was the Apollo 11 mission, that wrote his daughter's initials on the surface of the moon. And since the moon doesn't have an atmosphere like us, those initials are still in that ground, if you will, or, in the moon.
Yeah.
He wrote his daughter's initials. It was really cool. I love this fact that you found. Our moon is the 5th largest moon of the 190 plus moons in our solar system. I never knew that.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
When you think about, I mean, Jupiter and Saturn have like several dozens of moons that are orbiting. And you know, one of the things is that a moon orbiting is one of the factors that make it a planet. That was one of the big
Hmm.
arguments about Pluto. Was Pluto a planet or not? Back when it was
Hmm.
being argued, one of the factors is whether or not it has a moon. That's one of the attributes to being a planet.
Right. And apparently, some other moons in our solar system, moons will have other moons orbiting around them, if that makes sense. But our moon does not have a separate moon around it, nor does it have any rings either.
Good point. Hey,
Hmm.
Lucas wants to know. Lucas is a fourth grader. Thanks for watching with us, Lucas. Does the different phases of the moon affect Earth's weather? What a great question, Lucas. So, not so much the phases of the moon, but the
Hmm.
orbit and where the moon is in its orbit. And it won't affect, remember, when we talk about weather, we're going to talk about what occurs within the troposphere, right? So, the troposphere effect with the moon's distance from the Earth, which again, in its orbit, there's going to be a time, it's not a perfect circle. Let's look at it that way. If you were to draw a perfect circle around the Earth, and this is the orbit, well, it's not a perfect circle. There's going to be times in that orbit where it gets a little closer and it gets a little farther away. Well, when that happens, what's going to affect us here on this planet is the tides. The gravity pull between the moon and the earth and the sun, all that gravitational pull affects our tides. So when we're at low tide or high tide, so if you're on a coastal area, like say down at Port Aransas, high tide and low tide is very important. It's important for fishing, but it's also important for recreation of all kinds. And so those kind of forecasts are given every day. You know, in the local newspaper and on television in Corpus Christi, they'll say, okay, low tide is this time, high tide is this time, every day. And what's affecting
That's a good
that is the
point.
gravitational pull from the moon.
Mhm.
So that at different points in that orbit, sometimes that high tide is going to be a little bit higher, or that low tide is going to be a little bit lower, just depending. But great question, Lucas. Angela wants to know, what are the four largest moons of our solar system? So if we're the fifth, you want to know where those top four are located, right? That's a good question. I'm going to go with at least one of them's got to be a Jupiter, don't you think, Megan? Do you know?
It is the Jupiter moon. I know it's number one, and its name is Europa. So that is
Nice.
going to be the largest moon.
That's the largest moon in our solar system. Now, is that, are you able to know, I mean, what's the relationship size to our Earth on the largest moon in our solar system? Not to put you on the
Oh,
spot.
that's a good question.
See?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Right? I'm just curious too. There was a great chart one time that I saw showing us our sun and then
Uh-huh.
all of our ensuing planets, right? And the relationship in size. But then our sun in relationship to other stars that we've discovered in our solar system. And it is
Mhm.
fascinating. I mean, at a certain point, our sun is about the size of our moon to Jupiter. You know, I mean, it's like our sun is just a small dwarf compared to some of the stars that we've discovered.
Right.
All right, let's see what else we got. Good stuff, guys. Okay, so fifth largest with the number one orbiting Jupiter as we speak. NASA has 3 spacecraft exploring our moon. And I love these numbers. 24 humans have traveled to the moon, 12 have walked on the moon. So half of them were there but never got out and never walked. Maybe their craft landed and they did some experimentation and things. Maybe they didn't even land and they just orbited. But either way, only half. And I remember this
Hmm.
fact too, Megan. You ever hear about the 12 that each of the 12 were Eagle Scouts?
I have not heard that.
I heard that. Um, I know that like Neil and Buzz, but that several, if not all of them, of those 12 people were Eagle Scouts, the highest, rank of the Boy Scout.
Well, look at that.
Yeah, we'll have to Google that one.
Well, I know that 10 of those moonwalkers followed Buzz and Neil right after, they walked on the moon and stepped foot on the moon back in 1969. I know about 10 of those astronauts followed them.
Okay. I love when you call them moonwalkers, and you
Hmm.
know what I'm thinking, of course. You know, ding, 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 right? Awesome. Well, that is the moon.
Exactly.
I love this. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
These graphics, once again, Meagan Massey is the graphic goddess. Look at that. That is
Hey,
just
thank
beautiful.
you.
I love the image of the moon because that is accurate, and that is a really good depiction without a telescope.
Exactly. I need to get a telescope, like a really good one, so I can sit out on my porch and just look at, the stars and the different types of planets that you could see really bright in our sky. Of course, when there's no clouds, right?
Exactly, right? I know, too, that there is a wonderful app that you can use, and you point your phone to the sky, and it gives you what you're looking at in that night sky. So you can see what different
Yes.
constellations you're looking towards in relationship to the moon. I
Hmm.
forget the name of that, but you can look for that. It's really good. Well, that's going to wrap up Moon Monday.
Technology, once again.
I know, right? That's what's so great is that we're at the, the best of the best right now. And for those of you out there like Lucas and, second, third graders, no telling what kind of technology you're going to have at your fingertips in years to come when you're adults like Megan and I. But and that's what I want to encourage you. Everything you saw today about the moon, or if you want to do some side research and draw some pictures about man walking on the moon and putting the flag down, or look into that reflector project from University of Texas and the McDonald Observatory, please draw it out. Show us what you're learning about the moon so we can all share it on Fun Time Friday. And you can get those in during the week. The sooner you get them in, then the better off we are in getting those ready to make sure everybody sees them on Friday. And, again, we can all kind of share the knowledge and share some stories about what we learned about the moon. All right, coming up tomorrow, Megan, tell us about Andrew Wilson's Tropical Tuesday. This should be really cool. Are you there, Meg? Oh, well, I think we lost audio. I can't hear you. Just in case, and I'm looking at your picture, I see you're not talking, so I don't want to talk over you. Tropical Tuesday. Andrew Wilson has an incredible passion for tropical weather, knows a lot about hurricanes, about tropical cyclones. That covers them all. And we're weeks away now. June 1 is the beginning of hurricane season 2020. A couple of forecasts have already been issued on what we expect to see. And we are, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, especially when we're living within the worst news of our time, we're expecting an active 2020 season. There are a lot of conditions in place that are pointing to an above average amount of hurricanes this season. One of which is we're losing El Nino. And El Nino typically means a less active season with fewer storms. Well, as we lose El Nino and slip into a neutral pattern, and then almost by August, September, forecasting into a La Nina, which is the exact opposite of El Nino. It's when you have a cooling of the Pacific Ocean and air. Well, that was the exact same setup in 2005, which was one of the most active on record. We had almost 30 tropical systems that season. It was unbelievable. And that was the season that produced Katrina. Of course, you remember Hurricane Katrina. So that's going to be a great topic for tomorrow. A lot to learn about our tropical systems. Megan, are you back?
Yes, I am. Okay.
There you are. So yeah, I was just saying Andrew's passion for tropical weather is unparalleled.
Right. So tomorrow on Tropical Tuesday, he'll be talking about where tropical cyclones form and they form. So that'll be pretty interesting.
It is the biggest storm on the planet. And what's always interesting to me is
It
that
is.
the hurricane has to happen. You know, as much as we'd love to see them not happen and not destroy things and jeopardize lives, property, and all the above, we need them. It's how the earth cools. It's a very important process in the life cycle of our planet. The amount of heat released from the hurricane, it's kind of how the earth sweats. All right. Well, that's going to wrap things up
That's
for
true.
Moon Monday. Meagan, Massey, thanks so much for joining us. Again, thanks so much for the incredible graphics that really make this tangible for us.
Oh, thank you.
Stay home, work safe, and we will see you on Tropical Tuesday. Hope everybody has a wonderful Monday. I'll see you on Eyewitness News later. I think you'll be doing, are you on first at 4? And then we'll be joining in for 5 and 6 and 10. But yeah, make sure to join us every day this week. Have your questions ready. Have your pictures done and mailed again, btaylor@kens5.com. Our pleasure. Thanks so much for watching. I know, right, Cynthia? We don't need any more hurricanes either. 2020 has been a rough one. Y'all take care. God bless. Have a wonderful day today.